Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Refine and Shine podcast. I'm super excited about my guest today. In fact, we were talking for probably about 25 minutes before we even started hitting the record button. And every time we talk, we just have these great, inspiring conversations. I truly feel so inspired by all the things that she's done and all the things that I can see for her doing in the future. So I'm super excited. Her name is Christina Hero. She is the founder and the CEO of Royalty Janitorial Services, which is a thriving corporation that she has successfully led for the past 7 years. She launched this company as a bold escape from a toxic marriage, determined to create financial stability and a better life for her and her 4 children. What began as a personal sacrifice quickly became her empire, built with resilience, sweat, and tears. Today, Royalty Janitorial Services stands as a testament to her strength and her vision. She now dedicates herself to helping other women find their voice, launch their own businesses, and step into the lives they are meant to lead. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited, of all the things, like we were talking earlier, and all the things that you have and how far you've come. So kind of just walk us through this journey of being where your business started, but prior to the business started, how did you get to where you are today? Because your business is thriving. And I just want to also say most businesses fail within the first 5 years. So to be 7 years in this type of business, I just want to say, congratulations. And I know that you have put in some hard work for this. So kind of just walk us through this.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but so I was married in a toxic relationship, a lot of domestic violence, and I made a choice. During that marriage, I had gave up my career at Kaiser to raise our children. He had 2 children from a past marriage. I had 3, and so we had a son together. So it was, the choice to stay home and raise the children. So during that process of realizing that I had no income, I didn't really have a support system. I needed to secure an income to survive once I left. So I started cleaning houses. During my free time, I'd have someone babysit my son for a few hours, and then word of mouth spread. And, I was getting all these referrals, and I couldn't keep up with what how many referrals I was getting. So I was, had a thought process, and a light bulb went off, and I'm like, what if I trained other people to do what I'm doing, and then I have more time for my children. So I did that. It was a success. The business grew, and during that process in 2019, I filed for divorce. And I think during that time, I didn't really process everything that I had went through. It was just more like, I have to get out. Like, this company is built because I have to survive. Pulled my bootstraps up and just, went into survivor mode. So went through the divorce, and the company did great. COVID hit, and, my fears kicked in on, oh my gosh, what if during all the shutdowns, what if I lose business? But surprisingly, my business grew. All of the sanitation and stuff took place. So we did really well. There's been a lot of shifting and reorganizing, but what I've been revealed throughout the years is that it's great income and it's wonderful, but I had a higher calling. And, at the beginning of this year, I started shifting towards, advocating for women. And as I started shifting that mindset, I was challenged again with facing my abuser. And so, although it was confirmation that that was my calling, it's still a hard process to have to revisit your past and what you went through. And I realized through this process that I hadn't really healed, not necessarily healed. I didn't really realize exactly what I had went through because I had pushed through in survivor mode and went into building my company. So looking at all of this and going through the evidence for court, I had a lot of moments of, wow, I really endured all of this. And how did I not see these things? And a lot of reflection takes place. And not only that, I came to the reality that a lot of women don't realize their strength. They're so broken down by their abusers that they believe they're not capable. And so I feel like God's showing me in this that it's important to, remind women that they do have the strength, they are capable, that they are worthy, and truly help them. So that, and I'm realizing that there's not very many resources for, as far as legal advocacy for women and domestic violence survivor. There's not really any legal advocacy that I found. So, I mean, those are kind of leading me in that direction. And I've worked with employees from the past that were in those situations and kind of help them start to build and get out and, build their blueprint to escape.
I love all of that. And I just love how you shared, like, you started this, cleaning as a way to kind of like get out of the house, escape from the things that you were enduring, the 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 abuse, and then from there you realize, oh, I could start a business this way, and from there you've not only started your business, you've expanded. What, you're in 3 different states now?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 different states. You've expanded, and but not only that, now you're using your voice, and it's taking you a while. And I think that that's sometimes like when we are in survival mode, we just push through. We just like, okay, what do I got to get through next? What do I got to get through next? And we don't really stop and feel. We're just kind of like numb to some things because we're just in like, okay, we got to take care of this, got to take care of this, do this for the business, take care of our children, and we don't sit with how much we've been hurt. And now that we realize all of these things you're pushing through, you're helping others. And I think that, you're giving others a voice. And I think that's so important. And we talked before we even started recording, is that you never really wanted to share your story because you didn't want to be considered like a victim. And so how has that transformed now? Like, you're starting to share your story, you're starting to share, how has that helped others? How they reached out to you? Like, tell us a little
Yeah,
bit.
it was so I sat with that post for a few hours and I'm like, should I really post this? Because you're vulnerable. Like I didn't know what feedback I would get. I didn't know if people would view it in a negative light. I didn't know if it was going to be accepting. I didn't know if women would reach out. And I've received so many messages from women saying that they're going through the same situation. This is and not only women, I've received messages from men. And so it was like, wow, like that was validation that how important it is because when you're in an abusive relationship, you don't want to talk about it. It's embarrassing and you feel like, and sometimes even in those situations you're even questioning if that's a reality, if that's really what you're going through. And so the responses that I've received, it's been amazing. So I'm happy I made that post and I've taken that step.
I love that all the things that you shared, because it is true. Like, they don't want to talk about it. They may feel ashamed, thinking that, or scared too. Like, okay, if I talk about this or if I share, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my kids? All of those things. And so, how did you get to the point where you're going through this relationship? You want to end it. How did you finally make that choice? Like, what was the walk? If you don't mind sharing, walking us through that.
No, and I think it kind of plays out in how we met. So in 2019, we had already been going through a lot of really hard problems, and he was a narcissist, so he was really good at making you believe that you're crazy and that these things aren't really happening. So we went to an event in Las Vegas, and it was some networking event that he'd gone to, and I went there with him for support. And finally, we had gotten into an argument. And in my mind, I already knew that I wanted to file for divorce. It was just, rationalizing how I would make it happen, how I would support my children. And I'm like, you know what? If we have to move to a smaller house, like, so be it. I was like, if we have to give this and this up, like, so be it. It's better than putting my children through this. So we got in this argument. And I'm like, you know what? You go to your event. I'm going to go to dinner by myself. I need some time away. So we were staying it was at the time the Hard Rock Hotel. I went down to go have dinner by myself, and I sit down at the counter, and these 3 gentlemen walk in and sit down next to me, and one of them happened to be Bill Walsh. And he starts making this conversation about, like, hi, like, my name's Bill. And he was like, he starts telling me a story about how he almost died a week before. He was on a yacht and he blacked out and fell and all these things. And I was like, oh, wow. And he goes, by the way, like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I own a janitorial company. At that time, I was a sole prop. I wasn't a corporation. It was, still pretty small. And we start talking about it. And he was like, oh, like, I hold these networking events similar to Secret Knock. I'm not sure if you've met Bill Walsh before.
No,
So
not yet.
he gives me his contact, and he said, hey, like, if you're ever looking to grow your company, like, let me know. So we went home the next day, and we got in a pretty big fight. And it was some of the pictures that I had posted of the bruises. So, it was a pretty bad fight. And I sat in the closet that morning because he kept screaming at me, telling me I was crazy. That didn't happen. And so I just sat there crying. And in that moment, and in my mind, because he kept a threat that was constantly made to me, and why a lot of women who are abused don't leave is because a lot of abusers will threaten them or threaten their children. And one of the main threats was he always threatened my life. And so I sat in the closet and I'm trying to think about how if I left, how he would make my life a living hell or he would hurt me. And if I stayed, what I'd be enduring and what type of childhood I'd give my children. And so in that moment, I said, it can't get any worse than this. It honestly can't. So the next morning, I told him I had a job to do. I went straight to the courthouse, filed for divorce, and I think a few days later had him served. But the process of getting him out of the house and feeling safe, it was so dramatic. And I didn't realize how dramatic and how much toxicity and craziness that I went through until gathering evidence for my current custody situation. And that's one of the main reasons I feel like I've become the blueprint. It's important for me to show women, like, I've learned the mistakes that I made in exiting and how I can help others navigate that a little bit safer. And, number one is they need a support system. Having to go through that by yourself, it's traumatizing.
Yeah, I would absolutely say that is to have that support system. And I love that I think you shared it in your post as well, is just to have that documentation, to start
Oh, yeah.
documenting things. And so can you kind of walk us through how important that is?
Oh, it's so important. During the time, it didn't make sense to me why I was doing it. And I don't know if that was God leading me through it. And so, like, even looking back at some of the thing, like the pictures that I sent to a private email, and I was literally making posts, I mean, not posts, like notes in my notes, and then sending them to that email. So every time a situation would happen, I would say like what he did, what time it was, where I was. And looking back on that, I'm so thankful because, I mean, dealing with a narcissist, you go to court and they will paint you as this monster and they will tell their own story. And unless you have proof, there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to sit there and be judged by whoever he's telling the story to.
Yeah, I think that that's so important. And I love that you're helping, others, like to show them that like if that you were in a situation, these are the things that I wish I had known. And so let me help you with walking through it. And then also, and I know that you've done that with your business as well. So you've helped women walk them through to help them get out of survival mode into just being who they truly should be without having to worry about the abuse and things like that.
Yeah, and the fears behind it as well. Like a lot of us think we're not capable or it's a lot harder than it actually is. So actually mapping that out and showing them, because sometimes you think like, oh, like there's no way I could do this or I can't fit this in my schedule, but actually seeing it on paper and having somebody tell you like the step-by-step process and how long it takes and the cost behind it, it's actually relieving.
I love all the things that you share. I think it's really important because and I love how you shared earlier that it wasn't just the women that reached out to you; that there are men who have reached out to you too. And because abuse can be, it doesn't matter if it's domestic violence is domestic violence. Like it doesn't matter. It's when your spouse or your partner, your domestic partner, could be physically abusing you, emotionally abusing you, sexually abusing you. There's all kinds of forms of abuse. And I think that sometimes what people don't understand when they're being abused, because they're like kind of locked into this fairy tale of what it was like before, like when the things were good and the times were good, and the happy times, because sometimes abuse doesn't happen until years later and things like that.
Yeah,
Would you
or the
say?
fact of them blaming a lot of women blame themselves. So if I did this differently, maybe he wouldn't have gotten so angry, or if he was triggered by this thing that I did, and maybe if I changed that. And I think that's where a lot of us go wrong. Instead of realizing the reality of what's actually happening, we try to make excuses for it because you don't want to face the fact that that person doesn't love you. Because how can somebody love you and hurt you in those ways?
Yes, yes. I think I love how you shared that as well. I mean, that's truly important. We like, question ourselves, like, what did we do? Did I mess up? Or, did I cook this right? Or should I have said this word? Or, things like that. I think, I have seen abuse in my childhood. I've seen, things that just throughout my life, I've seen people being abused in just all different types of ways. And I think that the silence is the hardest part, is when you're keeping that silence, you're putting stress onto yourself, and that stress and everything can lead to all these other health issues And I was just curious, did you go through, while you were not talking about it and like kind of hiding it, so to speak, did you go through some health issues as well?
That's a funny thing that you asked that. So during my marriage, I was struggling with autoimmune issues, and doctors could never pinpoint exactly what it was. And so when you're in fight or flight mode and you're in survival mode, like your body, I don't want to say shuts down, but like your body reacts to all of that stress that you're enduring. So all of these things that I was going through, and as soon as I exited my marriage and got him out of my life, well, not out of my life, obviously I have to co-parent with him, but had those boundaries in place where he didn't no longer had access to me, all of the health issues went away. I no more autoimmune. I didn't have hyperthyroid. I didn't have any like underlying health issues. Like everything has been fine since, up until this past year when I started having to deal with, the same stalking and all these things that are going on now. Now, I'm facing high blood pressure and issues with that, but it's stress related. So these things affect us in so many ways, and we don't realize that while we're dealing with it. And we
Oh,
want to blame it on other things like, oh, maybe it runs in our family.
I think that that's so important, is to realize when you are like it, and it could be, it doesn't even any type of relationship. If there's any type of relationship, it could even be family members, friends, any of those things. When you start to feel like your blood pressure rises and all of those things, you need to learn how to set some boundaries with those people as much as you can, because it could be your life. Your life is at risk, and we only have one life to live. And we want to live it our best lives. And I think that's so important. And so when we have those feelings or anxiety, uh, it's good to start to learn like what is triggering this, what is causing this onset, and things like that. There's people that uh, not necessarily family members, but like when I am in a room with them and I start to hear them talk, and then I was like, I'm not going to be like, they're people I just don't want to be around, and I can make that choice. Like we can all make those choices for ourselves. So I think
Yeah,
that's
definitely. I don't know if you've ever heard Greg talk about, he gives an analogy regarding like, would you let a friend, family member, coworker, business associate, would you let them bring their garbage and dump it into your living room? And then what happens if they would keep coming over your house? Like, obviously, eventually you're going to tell them stop. And he was like, it's the same thing with people who bring negativity and, toxicity and like things into your life. So I've always remembered, since the first time I've heard him speak, and every time I'm dealing with the situation, I'm like, would I allow this person, because me with OCD and I'm super clean, would I allow this person to bring their garbage into my house? And I'm like, no, okay, boundary has to go up.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so true. I'm gonna think about that next time. Like, and is this person giving me toxicity, negative trash? Are they giving me garbage that I don't need in my life?
Yeah.
With all of the things that you've done, like you have this successful business, um you've grown all these things. What would you say is the hardest thing that you had to go through?
I would say so. I had a pretty traumatic childhood. And so I've never had an easy life. I mean, up until this point, I would say from my divorce to now, and having the ability to focus on my children has been the most peaceful and most rewarding part of my life. But from prior to that, from compared to like my childhood trauma, I would say my marriage was the hardest thing that I've ever had to go through. I mean, you're separating your child from, your, so I feel like, that's a hard decision right there of, do I really want to separate, from my husband, and, my son's going to go through all these things. But then you have to look at it like, do you want your son to grow up thinking that it's okay to abuse women? Do you want your son to grow up lying, cheating, stealing? So you have to make that decision. So do I provide a peaceful life and show them the right way, and then they can pick and choose and see for themselves who the other parent is? So, that's hard, and leaving is hard, and enduring it is hard. So I definitely say that's probably the hardest thing, and that's why I sympathize and want to help women.
And ultimately, it just came down to making the choice. I love how you said it. Do you want your child to think that this is okay? And once you decide that that's not what you want, and you make that decision, because like a lot of times it's this, we go, but just making a decision is hard. Like no matter what so once you decide that what is best for you, not just for you but your children, I think it makes it's still going to be hard, but it makes it easier to stop doubting what your decision is. Because I always say that when you sit there and, I for me particularly, I pray to God, and when I sit there and I, pray, and then I like the first thing like that comes to my mind, and I was like, that's gone. And then when you start to doubt yourself, on whatever decision it could be, taking a job, all the things, you start to doubt yourself, that's the devil coming in and saying, no, that's not for you. And when you start to have that doubt, you have that fear of failure and things like that. And I always say that people are so scared to fail, but I think that it's not that I think if you don't try, you're failing right away. You have to make the choice like, okay, maybe I made it. And I don't think that every time that failures are not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a lesson. What is the lesson I learned from that?
Exactly.
With all the things that you have, you have this successful business, and how are you you're coaching women to start their own businesses too. And so talk to us a little bit about what you're doing for that.
So helping women get out of the mindset of they're not worthy, that it's like I said, some women, myself, before I even started the company, I questioned whether it was even possible with children. So helping them first realize and getting out of that mindset, and then helping them map everything out, guiding them through the processes of, what licensing, insurance, everything that they need, and then doing one-on-one courses, encouragement, keeping their motivation going, speaking to them. I mean, obviously a lot of us, our stepping stone is dealing with our trauma, helping them through that trauma so we can really see our true selves and our capabilities.
I think that's so important, because the things that you're showing them is stuff that you didn't have. Like it would have been so. I'm sure that your business would have grew a lot faster had you
I hope
had
that
this
helped.
blueprint. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that that's important. Like sometimes we're so scared. Like, well, if I help this person, then they're going to become a competitor, or if I help this coach, then. But the thing is, everything that we do, it just helps people to. I say that whatever you give and whatever you can help people with, just helps multiply. Like so that multiplying effect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With all the things, so you're helping coaching women, and you got the successful business. Like, what else do you got going on this year? I think that you're going to have so many great things.
So yeah, I believe now with what I'm going through, I'm doing a lot of legal research and leaning more towards advocacy. So coaching is one thing, but advocating for women, giving them the resources that they need, not necessarily to just build. I mean, first step is putting themselves in a better position. I mean, whether they're in poverty, whether they're in an abusive relationship, whether they're not currently where they need to be, helping them move forward and see the path forward. I think that's uh, not necessarily, it hasn't been on my mind, but God's putting it on my heart. So I guess that's where I'm going.
I love that. I love that. Um, so with everything you got, I mean, you have so many things that you're doing and now, and I just wanted to say, for those people who don't really follow you, this is a woman who was being, abused. Like we've talked about that already, and just had a struggle, like not struggle, like she had to go and I could say that like now she's able to take vacations with her family and with her children and do all of these things. And so I want to tell you all that it is possible. Like it is possible. If you think that you can't do this, Christina can show you that it is possible that you can get out of a bad situation and turn everything around. I mean, a successful business, it's been in business, is it 6 or 7 years now,
7 years.
and multiple states now too. It's grown tremendously. Now is able to go on these really great vacations. And when I'm saying the great vacations, I was just telling her I'm like going to Mexico and Italy and all of these things with her children. It's because she made the choice, and it wasn't easy, but she can show you that there is a way and it is possible. You just have to decide, am I going to let myself stay in this type of situation, or can I, you have peace now, and I love how you said that, do I want a peaceful life, or do I want to always be in this fight or flight, or this fear all the time, walking in eggshells? So I love that you're doing all of the things, because you have, like I said, I love seeing you traveling and all of the things. Like when you were in Italy, I was like, oh my gosh, I wanted to taste the food.
But what's crazy about it is being in that reality and then looking back on everything that I've had to endure to get to this point. Sometimes it's like Italy, for instance, I'm like, wow, like I'm here. Like, I can't believe I'm here. Like, I've done this all by my I've never asked for help from anyone. I've done all of like step by step by step. I mean, I go to these networking events, I meet wonderful people, but I'm never the one to be like, I really, except for now with the whole legal things, I'm finally reaching out to, my network of people, and I'm like, you know what, I do need help. I thought I didn't, but I do. And that was a very hard thing for me to do. But it's the same thing in business. Like, I always like, I could ask for help and it would get me a little bit farther, but let me do this myself.
I
But
love that. I love
I don't recommend that to others. I recommend you ask for help.
yes,
You
yes.
network.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Like, we were talking before we went on the air, like before we started recording, we were talking, and it's like, sometimes we feel as, it doesn't matter, women or men. Sometimes, like, it depends on like our lives, like whatever, however we grew up, maybe is that we get scared to ask for help. We get scared because we don't want to be seen. We don't want to sound like for me personally, I didn't want to seem like I'm a problem if I need help, or that I'm a failure, or all these other things. And sometimes we gotta use our voice. Like, God gave us a voice for a reason, and He gave us the ability to create. And it's whether we're creating businesses, children, whatever we're creating, He puts things on our heart for a reason. And how dare we not like squander that thought, because or squander what He's giving us, because we don't know how to do it, and we're scared to ask for help.
Exactly. And so, like me, it took me a while to even come forward and ask for legal help and ask friends for advice, because the same thing you said, like, I didn't want to seem like a problem, or I didn't want to seem like I was dumping my trash somewhere, and into their lives. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, but I really do need help. And, push come to shove, like, I reached out to a few of our friends, and like, no words spoken, like literally sending me resources here, resources there. And I'm like, wow, like, these are amazing friends that I have. And if I would have only asked for help earlier. So we have to
No,
get out of that mindset that we had as a child, and grow towards, reaching out to others and getting what we need.
yes, exactly. I love that. As we wrap up, though, I'm going to make sure that I have your Instagram so people can connect with you, and they can check out your business, just to see if they need any type of cleaning services. But I also wanted just to ask you, um, what is a word, a phrase, a book that they can read, or any type of action that somebody can take today? If there is a listener right now who is just struggling, and you really needs, he or she wants to refine and shine, they want to just improve their lives, what is something you would tell them to do?
So I would recommend that they read the book, which truly changed my perspective and get me out of the victim mindset and into a warrior mindset. It's Robert Short's, I want to say it's called Your Soul's Plan. Let me be sure. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. But that book, it just basically, it goes over why as your soul, I don't know if you're spiritual in any way, but why your soul chooses the life that it does before you incarnate. So, some people choose gender abuse, some people choose, to be, gay, they choose to be transgender, and they're faced with all of these tough decisions in life and judgment and everything, but it's for a greater purpose and for a greater lesson. So having that reality, instead of seeing it as like, oh my God, I went through this and it's so painful, and like, oh, like, why am I going through this? Because a lot of us question it, like, why? I don't deserve this, I'm a good person. But there's like a bigger, like, even going through this now and what I'm going through after reading that book, it made me realize, okay, like, at the end of what I'm going through, like, there's so many lessons that I'm going to learn, even though it's going to be very uncomfortable. Because, for instance, yesterday, like, I was so angry with God, and I've never been angry with God. But I'm like, I prayed so hard and you didn't show up for me. And then, like, it came to me, I was like, I did show up for you. You just haven't seen it yet. Like, you're learning something right now that you need to learn, even though it's going to be painful. Like, I'm going to walk you through it. But reading that book has really helped my mindset in that way. Let me look up the name just to be sure.
As you look that up, I also agree that, like, sometimes we like want something now, and I can remember a lot of times, in just going through my childhood and going through where I am today. One particular message that stood out to me is when my grandpa, or my great grandpa, when he was dying, he had cancer, and I was like praying and praying and praying, like, don't let him die, don't let him die, find a cure. And I realized, like, it's like, what is the, like, you have to learn how to grieve in order to, because it's going to help, we're going to have to let go of relationships later in life and all these other things. And you have to learn how to let go and learn how to believe that they are not suffering anymore. And we kind of talked before we started airing, we started recording. It's just even our dogs, like if they're suffering and all these things, and we have to make a decision to put them down. It's like God gave us the ability to love these people and love these animals, but we also have to learn how to let go, because they are suffering. And those are the things, like, you want to hold on to something, but you don't realize that person or that animal or whatever is suffering. And so you have to learn how to, those things like that. Like there's all these things that he puts onto us, and those lessons that you're learning right now, it's going to help somebody else later on the line, because that's what you're going to like. That's the purpose that God is calling you to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even in a business aspect, we tend to hold on to things even if they're hurting us. And so like with business, we'll hold on to clients that are difficult and employees that are difficult because we're afraid to move forward, we're afraid to hire, we're afraid to, let go of that client because like, that's income that you're losing. But it's all like if we trust, like for instance, last year before I made many changes with my company, I had two very difficult clients and two very difficult employees, and I kept going back and forth. And as I'm allowing all this stress to take place in my life, because of instead of just letting it go, and I kept pushing forward. Okay, like if I make these changes, this client will be happy, and if I make these changes, I can make this work with this employee. The second I let all of those go, I let the client go. Another one of my clients increased their contract twice. So, and I let those employees go, and I got employees that are a godsend. So, I mean, sometimes we hang on to very difficult things because we don't see what God has down the line. So, I love how you said that.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's that scarcity mindset, like we're so scared. And, you and I talked a little bit about before we started again. We talk a lot, and then when we start to record, like, oh, we better record this podcast. But it's the part of like, growing up in poverty or growing up in just all of these things. We're just so scared of letting that we just want to hold on to what we have because we're scared, because we're just like, oh, we finally got this client, or we finally got this paid client, or we finally got this or that. And then we're just scared because of to let things go because of, our like things that we've grown up on, and not having a lot as growing up, or all of these things. So I think it's important.
Exactly. Yeah, we can apply it to every area of our life.
Did you find out what the book is for sure?
Oh yeah. So it's Your Soul's Plan by Robert Schwartz, and he has two books. So it's the first book that I really found inspiring. The second one's good. It kind of goes into more detail, but to me, it just takes a different spiritual route than the first book. I feel like the first book, this Your Soul's Plan, is very it changes your mindset in so many ways.
Well, thank you for saying that, because that's going to be one of my books to add to my list to read, because I love to read. I don't know. I just get all these books and I read and I read, and sometimes I'm like, okay, I didn't even finish one book and I'm picking up another just based on my mood. Like maybe I want to just read this little like nonfiction book, or maybe I want to read like a development book, or all of these other things. Like I don't know. I love to read, so thank you
I
for
need to get into that. I mean, I'll start reading and then I get distracted.
that. Yeah, sometimes I do too, and sometimes I actually start to read just because I want to go to sleep.
Oh
I
yeah,
want
I see that. It puts me to sleep every time.
Well, I appreciate it so much. I thank you for being on my guest today, and I cannot wait to see all the growth, and I can't wait for us to connect again at the next event that we attend together. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the chance to tell my story.
You're welcome.